Man, Steve Robertson likes some street tacos and wings from Two Brothers in the historic Cotton District, or maybe a shrimp po' boy or a muffaletta from their brand new sister restaurant, Older Brother Bistro, right across the alleyway in the Cotton District, too. You're listening Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How does it feel to have two books in the top 10 bestsellers in the state of Mississippi?
Well, that's really cool. You know, it's actually happened a couple times, but I was a little surprised to see Flim Flam, 7 years after its release, creep back in there. But, it is coming up on Christmas, and, everybody's got an Ole Miss brother-in-law that they'd like to give a gag gift to. So we don't question people's motivation. We're just grateful for the sale, But, it's pretty cool. And, some stiff competition out there. Maybe we make a chance to run number one later in the year. But it's always nice to be recognized. And, it's like you never take that stuff for granted. I mean, no matter how hard you work on stuff, you have to have people that respond to the work that you put in. And I think The Dude is the best book I've ever written. And so not surprised, but also very, very grateful to the book readers of Mississippi and certainly our independent bookstores. And if I can talk about that just a second, guys, we are so blessed in this state to have so many incredible independent bookstores. And, so rather than run to Amazon, I know it's so easy. I get guilty of that too. We don't even sell my books on Amazon anymore because we want to protect our vendors in Starkville and around the great state of Mississippi. But we are so blessed to have Lemuria Books and Square Books and, Bay Books down on the coast and Book Martin Cafe. And so when you need books, even if you got to order online, order from an independent Mississippi bookstore. I think that is a wonderful thing to kind of keep our literary heritage alive.
Steve Robertson, give me a 30 seconds on your new book because I want you to do that, but then I got some things that we got to hit.
Well, I think obviously I think it's the best thing I've ever written, and I think a lot of it. Many of these stories are over 100 years old, and
Duty Noble.
Oh yeah, and it's not just about duty. It's about kind of the life and times. Like there's some talk about World War I and then the World War II situation when State and Ole Miss both were precluded from resuming football for a stretch there. Even though much of the Southeastern Conference was resuming after World War II. And I think State and Ole Miss were one of four schools that weren't expected to field the team. But in the end, State and Ole Miss folks got together in the legislature and got it approved that we could resume football with the rest of the conference. That's something I didn't know, and there's a lot of things I didn't know. That's the best thing about doing this sort of stuff is, in educating yourself, on the history and, of athletics in the state of Mississippi. And some cool things in there, too. Also, with segregation and things like that and how Duty Noble and Tad Smith both had to deal with some of those things with the state legislature. And we've actually got a copy of a bill that died in committee, but a story about that, about how it would have been illegal, for state-funded institutions to play against integrated rosters. And you can see the bill for itself in the book.
Oh, wow. All right, so Steve's new book is out for the holidays, and he's bouncing around the state of Mississippi book signings. And so when's your next book signing?
Friday, and I have to live week to week these days. I don't have anything this week. It's an open date, probably at Maroon and Company. It's Friday afternoon.
Okay.
And the next week will be busy again. So.
Okay. Mississippi State is in football the lowest they've been in 20 plus years. And it's only a few of the posts that really get me, on Gene's page, but Colonel Kang is your best poster, Steve. And he's kind of laying it out and letting everybody know. And I'm not saying, well, none of us are right 100% of the time. And I'm not saying that I catch every one of his posts, but 90+% of the time, he is swimming in the right end of the pool, and he's letting people know that to win, they got to get their act together in several different, ways. And this thing has been a disaster. Moorhead was a terrible hire. Leach could beat you. He was brilliant, could beat you on game day. But, bad staff, bad recruiting, and then, of course, passes away, rent a coach with Arnett, and now the most inexperienced staff in the SEC. What do you make of Colonel Kang's post on genespage.com?
Well, number one, he's my friend, and I do know him, and he will be overjoyed to know that he is being featured on statewide radio today. But he's probably the most knowledgeable baseball poster I have, and at times he gets a little bit emotional about football, and it's because it comes from a good place, and he's not alone in this. That's one thing that I talk about on my own show. Apathy is the enemy of athletics, right? And so when people get out here and react to what some people consider negative, it's actually a positive thing, because when you have dialogue, you have passion, right? When people care, they're going to respond because they want your athletic programs, your university to advance, right? And so that's an important aspect. It comes from a good place, whether you agree with it or not. And I believe that dialogue on message boards and social media is invaluable to all of us, not just the university itself, but to the fan base. There are a lot of people out there that don't really know the lay of the land. They just know, hey, the ball game's this weekend, I'll be there,
Right.
And you need some fans like that, right? But I had to sit down with Zach Selman recently, and he kept mentioning the House settlement. Now, we have talked about that extensively on the message boards and in articles, but for some reason, when Zach says it, it has, maybe a chord of truth to it. And you're like, well, wait a minute, what is this all about? I didn't realize, we're going to be spending, $25 to $30 million a year to pay student athletes. And so, it's not business as usual for anybody, because you got NIL concerns, you got the facility concerns. And I think in many respects, the facility arm race is going to slow down a lot. But I think basically what you get, I must call his real name, I don't want to do that, but I think when you get Kang out there posting these things, it can be, even if you don't agree with it, it can be very constructive because he wants more, right? And it's not, there are a lot of people out there, Bo, as you know, that are consumers, right? And they're thinking, hey, Mississippi State needs to do more. Well, we are Mississippi State. It's not as simple as, okay, well, Zach Selman just needs to write another check. Well, that check's got to be cashed at the bank. And so everybody's got to do a little bit more. And that's not, hey, maybe you can't afford to give, and maybe you can and don't, and you should. But
there's a lot of that.
Well, everybody can buy apparel. Everybody can buy tickets. And everybody can come to games and get concessions and support Mississippi State. I had somebody recently talked about, Arkansas, how their fans are, win, lose, or draw. You look at, the early years of Holtz at South Carolina, how they still sold out Williams-Brice Stadium. You look at LSU. I mean, well, the times have changed. And so everybody's got to be, a stockholder in Mississippi State athletics if you really want state to truly advance. And we got some things to feel good about. But the football program is not where anybody hoped or expected it to be at this point. And I think in many respects you are in crisis mode in some respects. But I do think there is a plan in place, especially for the upcoming portal season, to secure some things. But, listen, this is the new age of college athletics. And anybody that thinks, well, it'll get back to how it was, I miss the good old days. The good old days are gone and dead forever.
Done. Yeah, no, I love that he calls out people and is constantly putting pressure, and he's spot on in what he's saying. I do think it's funny that it's still making people mad. But anyway, Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line, genespage.com. They've got to make a move at the defensive coordinator position, in my opinion. How do you see it?
Well, it's so interesting. You work through that. Like I was going through the game, the Tennessee game. When you're there, sometimes it's like when you're in the moment, you're just thinking about the next play, right? I mean, so you don't get the 35,000-foot view, And so I get back yesterday and I'm working through the replay of the game, and the defense didn't cost Mississippi State that game in Knoxville. The offense did. And you look up and you're like, hey, the State forces a fumble in the red zone, and then State gets a goal line stand, and turns them back, and then you get a 3-and-out. And, it's like there were enough stops made in that ball game that State had an opportunity to win. And so, I don't make these decisions, but I tell you that Arkansas game was a complete debacle, and that's why I could never be a head coach, Bo. Because like if you were my defensive coordinator, and we go out there and we have a game against Arkansas that we think is winnable because hey, the top offensive player is out, right, and you got to go stop a freshman running back, and we get beat the way we did, I'd have fired you. I mean, like we wouldn't have made it to the locker room. Bo, you're done, because I could never be. I'm too emotional for that. But then I got to be honest with myself too. If I'm the offensive guy, and I go back and look, what do we have? 87 yards passing, something like that against Tennessee. I mean, it's like the defense showed up to play, and people look up and say, well, you give up 33 points, you got to do a better job. And maybe that's true, but the reality of it is, I didn't think the defense let State down on Saturday. I thought it was more on the offensive side of the football. So to just suggest that it's, hey, you just go hire a new defensive coordinator, it's going to fix everything. That's just not true. State's got to be better in every facet of football.
Yeah, but they got to upgrade there. I mean, this is not they did this the last 2 years in a row. So I'll go with Colonel King. This is unacceptable. They on campus, the administration and others can decide if they want to be an SEC football program or a Sun Belt program. You've gone Matt Brock and now Coleman Hutzler. Now, let me give you some other guys who were calling plays around the league. Clayton White at South Carolina, defensive coordinator. Brad White, Kentucky, big-time defensive coordinator. Pete Golding, big-time defensive coordinator. Elko, big-time defensive coordinator. Durkin, big-time defensive coordinator. Kirby Smart, big-time defensive coordinator. I may have missed one. And so they just can't do this. I mean, I get that they played, that Tennessee wasn't interested. Nico got knocked out. They did play hard, and some good things happened. They got to go out and get a big boy defensive coordinator, and they got to surround Levy with some veterans coaches who have been in the big boy fire. Because last year they had money. You know this, Steve. They had well over $6 million to spend, and the defensive side of the staff, they didn't even miss out on people in the portal, much less get people in the portal. I mean, I think that's something that should be talked about on your board. They didn't even miss. You can't name guys that they missed. They just weren't. They didn't have a beat on anybody. They had 100,000 here, 300,000 here, 400,000 here to pay players. They couldn't even get in on anybody because I guess they weren't ready to roll. If Levy's going to make it, they got to go get a guy from G5 or Power 5 who's a veteran who's been calling plays for several years. The Matt Brocks and Coleman Hutzlers, I mean, that's Texas State type stuff, in my opinion, Steve.
Well, and that's fair, but they did miss on several defensive players last year, and like Nick Scorton's a great example. This is a guy, you go get Pac out of Purdue, and you're thinking, okay, maybe that gives you some insight with Nick, but they were never really in a ball game there. I mean, there were some big misses, especially on the edge, and those chickens have kind of come home to roost. I mean, that's the reality of it. But the bottom line is this: is you go back and you look at every first year coach, right? You go back to Dan Mullen, right? I mean, so Dan comes in. And a lot of people don't know this, but the administration had to help him put a staff together.
Sure.
Because he's leaving Florida, right? So he's the coordinator, so he doesn't have ready-made staff to come with him. He knew he was going to bring Hevesy and a couple others, but so you go out and you hire Les Kenning, of course, a guy that Mississippi State people knew well. You bring Mark Hudspeth in, you go help to get Carl Torbush, and so you have this kind of thrown together staff in year one. And I don't think that really was the case with Leb because everybody that he hired, he had a relationship with. I mean, Dan, the first time you met some of these guys was in the interview.
Right.
And so anytime.
Which tells you all you need to know. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But you look at it, what did he do, in year two? He went out and got some more of his own guys, kind of got things going. But, here's the thing, as you mentioned, this is big boy football. This isn't getting the band back together and playing a few dates on Fraternity Row, right? I mean, this is big time football. And, Jeff Levy's going to have some difficult decisions to make in the offseason. And he needs to make those for the betterment of Mississippi State and his own career. And you and I both know in business, you can't do business with your friends sometimes, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. You got to be able to go there. You got people that you got to hold accountable, and you got to have a couple guys on staff that are obviously your ride or die guys. But you got to get some guys out here, obviously, that can do the job. And Bo, we've all been in this position before. when you realize that your job is not completely secure, you got one or two options, right? Some people just quit, just mail it in, and just go ahead, hey, just go ahead and call the moving company and update my resume and reach out to my agent. There are other people that fight. Other people are like, no, I'm not leaving here. I'm not going to get fired. I'm going to leave on my own terms. I'm going to turn this thing around and I'm going to get promoted and be, somewhere else, but I'm not going to get fired. And so I'm from that line of thinking, as you are as well. I know there are some people, as soon as you give them feedback, they update the resume. But, I think what Mississippi State is, you got to go ahead and be very, very almost cruel in some respects. You have got to think about
ruthless.
Absolutely.
This is a ruthless league. It's a passive fan base. They're going to have to here's what I've always said, whether I've been speaking to groups like you. Mississippi State likes the idea of winning in football. They don't want to win. They're going to have to decide from campus to alums if they want to win. Let's go to recruiting. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. How concerned should Mississippi State fans be with Camario Taylor, the big-time QB that's committed to Mississippi State, receiving an offer from Georgia, I think, on Sunday night, Steve?
Well, I think it validates Mississippi State's evaluation, but I'm not overly concerned about him flipping to Georgia. We've actually had some conversations, with him and some people connected to him in the last 24 hours, and hope to have an update for you today. But, I'm not overly concerned about that. The Caleb Cunningham situation is much different, though. I do think that he is going to leave Alabama. And if I had to make a bet today, I'd bet on Ole Miss. It's not over by any stretch, and I think we're probably, 2 or 3 weeks away from him making a final decision. And give Lane and those guys a lot of credit. They've stayed on him, and of course they're putting a good product on the field. And so
absolutely,
if you're that guy thinking, hey, I want to get to the league, and I'm a wide receiver and I really want to go that far away from home, it makes reasonable sense, right? I mean, it's not some pretzel you got to bend yourself into. It makes perfect sense. And so I know State's trying to get him back on campus for a visit the Missouri weekend, so we'll see if that changes anything. But I would say right now, Ole Miss certainly has some momentum in the Caleb Cunningham sweepstakes.
So you expect him to flip out of his commitment to Bama and go to Ole Miss because of the unbelievable year they're having and so on?
If I had to pick it right now, I would. I think that commitment to Alabama is in trouble. I really do. And I know that he has been, on social media, hey, it's still a Roll Tide, whatever. I think Alabama is not going to have the class on signing day that some people expect them to have. Does that make sense? Like I just kind of hear some things in the wind about some kids out there that are committed to Alabama, or maybe some targets that Alabama's expecting that I think are going to end up elsewhere. And I think the same can be said for Auburn too. I mean, they lose Dante Core a couple of days ago. And I remember watching that kid in camp 2 years ago, and I'm watching this kid run around and cover and bat stuff down in the air, and I'm like, who are you? And he's like Dante Core, and I think at the time he had like Troy. That's it. But the kid was remarkable, and I was like, this is an SEC guy right here. And then, of course, State offers him, and some other people do. But that Dante Core kid is legit. And so I think, there's going to be some drama between now and signing day. It's because of the fact I think there's some players out there around this conference that are going to get some late overtures from some programs. And maybe that's NIL related. I mean, we're not Pollyannas around here, Bo. But I think you're going to see some musical chairs in the final days of the process.
How many portal guys you think Mississippi State takes or tries to get? 25?
Yeah, what we get 15 last year?
20.
A lot of it's going to depend on who all leaves, and not all that'll be Mississippi State's decision. I mean, and that's the case for everybody, right? I mean, it's just like you look at what Heupel's done. All those guys, as soon as they announced the NCAA investigation, I mean, half the team got in the portal, and then you look at what he's built. Yeah, but you'll process some guys out that maybe have come in that can't really play and are never going to contribute, and that's really the merciful thing, right? I mean, if they're never going to play here, it's just ridiculous to expect them to stay.
Yeah.
You'd like to see it somewhere else.
You got to cut the cord. Yeah.
Well, yeah, not to mention, too, it's a roster spot you need for somebody that can contribute. It's better for all parties when you do that. But there are going to be some guys that say, you know what, I just, listen, I've worked hard, and, maybe I hadn't got on the field here, and I'm going to go somewhere else. But, State has really got to do a good job on the offensive line and defensive line in the portal. I mean, we knew, and we talked about it all summer. The defensive line was going to be a real challenge. And then, lo and behold, at some points this year, you've been down 5 defensive linemen due to injury, and so you've got to go out there and find some war daddies, not just some warm bodies. You've got to go find some difference makers. And, again, we talked about that earlier in the show. I mean, there was some misses in the portal last year, and you weren't able to recover from that in the spring, and so you're stuck kind of playing with what you have. And now you see there's a reason you identified people in the portal in the first place was to upgrade your talent. Then you weren't able to do it. Now you got to go play with those guys.
Woo. All right. That's it's a big task, big haul in Starkville. And I think it starts with a new defensive coordinator and some other pieces. Steve Robertson, genespage.com. Tell Colonel Kang I said hello.
We'll do it, buddy. We'll see you.
All right, man. That hit was brought to you by two brothers and their brand new sister restaurant, Older Brother Bistro. They've got fried crab claws, an amazing muffaletta Reuben sandwich, and shrimp po' boy, all at Older Brother Bistro in Starkville. Basketball today? Josh Hubbard, Cam Matthews, is that right? Playing Southeast Louisiana? That'll be a good one. We are the Out of Bounds Show. We're brought to you by BetMGM. It's the king of sports books, and Bo Ravage's BetMGM Book Bar and Grill is the South's premier Vegas-style sports book. Visit a live betting window, self-service kiosk. Use the BetMGM app to place your bets on your favorite games and sporting events. The app offers free-to-play promotions, live betting options, boosted odds specials at your fingertips. Experience the action at BetMGM Book Bar and Grill, only at the Beau Rivage on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. See you tomorrow.